Sir, this aircraft is reserved for our VIP clients only. I'm going to need you to step back from the boarding stairs immediately. The security guard's hand moved toward his radio as Marcus Williams stood frozen on the tarmac of the luxury aviation terminal. 20 minutes. That's all it took to flip an entire company upside down. Picture this. A perfectly dressed black executive approaches a $50,000 per hour private jet. The boarding pass in his hand says he belongs there. But the staff? They see something else entirely. What happens next isn't just about one man's humiliation. It's about the moment when hidden power collides with naked prejudice, when systematic discrimination meets systematic destruction. You're about to witness the most satisfying corporate takedown of the year, where 20 minutes of assumptions lead to 20 years of consequences. Have you ever been judged by your appearance in a situation where you secretly held all the cards? The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine tarmac of Metropolitan Executive Airport. Gate 7 hummed with the quiet efficiency of wealth, where conversations happened in whispers and problems disappeared with phone calls. Marcus Williams adjusted his Italian leather briefcase and approached the gleaming Gulfstream G650. The aircraft bore the distinctive gold and navy logo of Pinnacle Aviation Services, the country's third-largest private jet company. His boarding pass crinkled slightly in the October breeze. 18 minutes until scheduled departure. Gate agent Sarah emerged from the terminal building, clipboard in hand, designer glasses catching the light. Her smile faded the moment she saw Marcus approaching the aircraft. "Excuse me," she called out, quickening her pace. "Are you here for catering or maintenance? The crew entrance is around back." Marcus paused at the boarding stairs. "I'm a passenger." Sarah's eyebrows lifted. She studied his face, then glanced at the aircraft, then back at his face. "I see. May I see your documentation?" He handed over his boarding pass. Sarah examined it with the intensity of a forensic scientist, turning it over, holding it up to the light. "This must be some mistake," she murmured. "Mr. Richardson specifically requested discreet service today." "Is there a problem with my booking?" "Well, it's just that—" Sarah's voice trailed off as she noticed other passengers watching from the terminal windows. She forced a professional smile. "Let me call our operations manager." Behind them, 3 other passengers, all white, all in expensive suits, strolled past security checkpoints without a second glance. Their boarding passes never left their jacket pockets. 15 minutes until departure. Security guard Tom Bradley materialized from nowhere, the way security guards do when they sense tension. His hand rested casually on his radio, fingers drumming against the black plastic. "Afternoon, folks. Everything all right here?" Sarah's relief was palpable. "Tom, we have a documentation question. This gentleman claims he has legitimate business on Mr. Richardson's aircraft." Bradley studied Marcus with the calculated assessment of someone paid to spot problems. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some ID and verify your purpose here. Our clients value privacy and appropriate representation." The word appropriate hung in the air like smoke. Marcus reached into his jacket for his wallet. As he did, something caught the light, a flash of platinum from a credit card, but not just any platinum card. This one bore a custom insignia that few would recognize. Aerolux Holdings, board member. The detail lasted less than 2 seconds. Sarah missed it entirely, focused on her clipboard. Bradley missed it, focused on Marcus's face. But someone else saw it. Jessica Martinez, a sharp-eyed flight attendant arranging champagne flutes in the galley, froze mid-pour. Her hand trembled slightly as she set down the bottle. 12 minutes until departure. Operations Manager David Walsh strode across the tarmac, his presence commanding immediate attention. 20 years in aviation had taught him to read situations quickly and resolve them quietly. "Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem here?" Bradley straightened. "This individual claims he has legitimate business on Mr. Richardson's aircraft. Documentation appears authentic, but given the nature of our clientele..." Walsh studied Marcus with undisguised skepticism. His eyes took inventory, the expensive suit, the confident posture, the calm demeanor, and found them inconsistent with his assumptions. "Sir, I'm going to be direct with you." Walsh's tone carried the patronizing patience of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "This is a $50,000 flight. Are you absolutely certain you're in the right place? Perhaps you're looking for commercial departures? Terminal B is just... I'm in the right place." "I see." Walsh glanced at Sarah, who shrugged helplessly. "The thing is, Mr. Richardson specifically books these flights for business associates who understand discretion and protocol. And you assume I don't understand protocol because..." The question hung between them. Walsh's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Let's not make this about race," Walsh said carefully. "This is about appropriate clientele and corporate image. Mr. Richardson has very specific expectations about his travel experience." Inside the aircraft, Jessica whispered urgently to Captain Robert Stevens. She showed him her tablet screen, not the simplified boarding document Walsh had been using, but the actual flight manifest, with complete ownership details. Stevens' face went pale. He stared at the screen, then through the window at Marcus, then back at the screen. "Oh no," he breathed. "Oh no, no, no." 10 minutes until departure. The situation was attracting attention. Other passengers leaned against terminal windows, phones appearing like flowers in spring. Airport staff gathered at a respectful distance, whispering among themselves. Someone's phone camera captured Walsh's next words. "Sir, I don't want to make this more difficult than necessary, but Mr. Richardson specifically books these flights for associates who share certain business philosophies." "Which philosophies would those be?" Walsh realized he was being recorded. His smile became more forced, his words more careful. "Professional compatibility, mutual understanding, shared approaches to business relationships." Mr. Richardson himself appeared at the aircraft door, checking his Rolex with theatrical impatience. James Richardson, CEO of Richardson Industries, had built his reputation on punctuality and precision. "What's the delay?" he called down. "We have a tight schedule to maintain." When he saw Marcus, his expression shifted from annoyance to confusion to something colder. "Oh, I see." Richardson descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. "Walsh, handle this efficiently. Our actual passenger is probably wondering where we are." The word "actual" cut through the morning air like a blade. Walsh nodded to airport security. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one final time to produce documentation proving you belong on this aircraft, or we'll need to involve airport police for trespassing." The trap was closing. 12 airport personnel now surrounded Marcus in a loose circle. 4 police officers approached from the terminal. At least 6 phones captured every word. But Jessica Martinez couldn't stay silent any longer. She appeared at the aircraft door, her face flushed with panic. "Captain Stevens," she called urgently. "Captain, I really need you to look at this manifest, right now." Richardson glanced up at her with irritation. "Miss, we'll handle the passenger logistics. Please prepare for departure." "Sir, I think there's been a..." "That's enough." Richardson's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. "Return to your duties." Jessica retreated, but her eyes never left Marcus. She knew something the others didn't. Something that was about to change everything. Walsh signaled to airport police while announcing loudly enough for all the phones to capture, "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for any delay. Security protocols, you understand." The circle tightened. The phones kept recording. And Marcus Williams stood perfectly still in the center of it all, his hand resting calmly on his briefcase. In exactly 8 minutes, everything they thought they knew about power would be proven wrong. 8 minutes until departure. Airport police officer Janet Morrison arrived with the measured stride of someone who'd handled thousands of disturbances. Her body camera blinked red, capturing everything for the record that would later change multiple careers. "What's the situation here?" Morrison's voice carried the practiced neutrality of law enforcement. Walsh stepped forward, assuming control. "Possible trespassing incident. Individual claims he belongs on this private aircraft, but documentation seems inconsistent with our typical clientele demographics." Morrison studied Marcus carefully. 23 years of police work had taught her to read people, and something about this situation felt wrong. The man standing before her showed no signs of distress, no defensive posturing, no attempts to flee or argue. "Sir, can you explain your business here?" Marcus could have ended everything with a single phone call. Instead, he made a calculated decision that would reshape the entire aviation industry. "Officer, I'm happy to cooperate fully, but I'd like to understand the specific company policy that determines who belongs on this aircraft." Richardson stepped closer, his patience evaporating. "For God's sake, this is exactly why I pay premium rates, to avoid these complications. Can't we just handle this quietly?" Walsh cut him off with a look that said, "Trust me, I've got this." But he didn't have this, not even close. 6 minutes until departure. Head of Airport Security Robert Kane arrived with backup, 3 additional officers and a portable metal detector. The situation was escalating from a simple verification to a full security incident. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kane announced to the growing crowd of onlookers, "we need to clear this area for standard security protocols." Nobody moved. The phones kept recording. Kane turned to Marcus. "Sir, we're going to need multiple forms of identification and a detailed explanation of your relationship to the chartered party." Marcus complied with everything. Driver's license, passport, boarding documentation. Each document was photographed, scrutinized, and cross-referenced. Marcus opened the refrigerator. Pinnacle Aviation's operations supervisor, Lisa Torres, arrived, breathless from running across the terminal. She carried a tablet loaded with passenger databases and flight manifests. "Everything appears legitimate," Torres announced after examining the paperwork. "But," she glanced at Richardson uncertainly. "Mr. Richardson, do you personally recognize this individual?" Richardson's answer was definitive. "Never seen him before in my life, and I certainly didn't authorize any additional passengers." The lie hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus smiled slightly. "I think there might be some confusion about who actually chartered this flight." Walsh's confidence wavered for the first time. "Sir, Mr. Richardson has been our valued client for 3 years. He specifically books discreet transportation for sensitive business meetings." "Has he?" Those 2 words carried weight that no one yet understood. 4 minutes until departure. Inside the aircraft, Captain Stevens was having a whispered argument with Jessica Martinez. She kept pointing at her tablet screen while he shook his head in growing panic. "Captain, you have to look at the ownership documentation," Jessica insisted. "The actual ownership papers, not the booking summary." "Ms. Martinez, return to your duties immediately." "Captain, please, just look at who actually owns aircraft registration N4821-X. Stevens finally glanced at the screen. His face went from pink to white to gray in the span of 3 seconds. "Oh, God. Oh, my God." He stared at Marcus through the window, then back at the screen. We're completely..." "What is it?" Jessica pressed. Stevens' voice cracked. "We need to stop this, right now." But outside, the security theater was reaching its crescendo. 2 minutes until departure. The crowd had grown to include 12 airport personnel, 4 police officers, multiple passengers from other gates, and a local news stringer who'd been tipped off about a developing situation at the executive terminal. Richardson played his final power card. Look, I don't care what paperwork says what. I know who I do business with, and I know who I don't. This is my aircraft for the next 4 hours, and I want this resolved immediately. Morrison studied Richardson with growing skepticism. Something about his urgency felt performative, desperate. Walsh addressed Marcus with the tone of someone delivering an ultimatum. Sir, we're going to need you to come with us for verification. This will be much easier if you cooperate voluntarily. The circle of authority figures pressed closer. 12 faces stared at Marcus, waiting for him to break, to confess, to reveal whatever scam they were certain he was running. Instead, Marcus reached into his jacket pocket. Not for identification, not for legal documents, for his phone. I think, he said calmly, it's time for some clarification. 1 minute until departure. Marcus dialed a number. The phone rang once before someone answered. This is Marcus Williams, he said, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air. I'm standing at Gate 7 with some questions about Pinnacle Aviation Services. Walsh's expression shifted from confidence to confusion. Sir, who exactly are you calling? Marcus held up one finger. Wait. Yes, I'll hold for verification. Richardson leaned toward Walsh, whispering urgently. Who could he possibly be calling? We control the aircraft. We control the schedule. We control... His words stopped when he saw Captain Stevens emerging from the aircraft, his face ashen. Stevens approached Walsh with the stumbling gait of someone who'd just received devastating news. David, Stevens whispered, we have a massive problem. What kind of problem? The kind that ends careers. Jessica appeared behind Stevens, holding her tablet-like evidence in a murder trial. Mr. Walsh, she said, her voice shaking, I need you to look at the actual ownership documentation for this aircraft. Not the lease summary, not the booking information, the actual registration and ownership papers. Walsh glanced at the tablet screen. His face underwent the same color transformation that had affected Stevens minutes earlier. That can't be right. It's right, Jessica confirmed. Check the parent company listings. Check the subsidiary ownership structure. Check who actually pays Pinnacle Aviation Services for this route. Richardson sensed the shift in energy. What are you people talking about? I lease this aircraft monthly. I have contracts, agreements, established relationship. Marcus finished his phone call. Thank you, he said to whoever had answered. Yes, I'll wait for the documentation to be transmitted. He hung up and addressed the crowd with the calm of someone who'd finally decided to reveal his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. I believe there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about authority, ownership, and who exactly has the power to make decisions regarding this aircraft. Richardson's confusion was genuine. What are you talking about? I charter this flight monthly. Walsh, what is he? Walsh's voice cracked when he spoke. Mr. Richardson, we need to review your lease agreement, specifically the clauses about subletting arrangements and ultimate decision-making authority. Their phones captured every word. The security cameras recorded every expression, and in 47 seconds, when Marcus's phone buzzed with incoming documentation, the entire power structure would collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. But for now, for these final moments, the people who had spent 20 minutes humiliating a man based on his appearance still believed they held the cards. They were about to learn the difference between borrowed power and actual ownership, and the lesson would be delivered with the devastating precision of a master class in corporate consequences. Departure time. Now. Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen, then showed it to Captain Stevens first. Stevens read the document header aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. Aircraft registration name 4821AX. Owner, Aerolux Holdings, LLC. Primary lessee, Marcus Williams, Chief Executive Officer. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. 12 seconds of absolute silence followed. 12 seconds where reality restructured itself around a truth that had been hidden in plain sight. Richardson broke the silence. That's impossible. I've been using this aircraft for 3 years. Marcus's response was surgical in its precision. Under a sublease agreement that specifically prohibits discrimination in passenger selection and requires pre-approval for all flights. Walsh's legs nearly buckled. Sir, we didn't know. The paperwork just showed Richardson Industries as the primary because you never bothered to read the full ownership structure. Marcus's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. Richardson Industries subleases from Aerolux Holdings. Every passenger requires my approval. Every flight operates under my ultimate authority. The phones captured Richardson's face as understanding dawned. The color drained from his cheeks like water from a broken dam. You own this aircraft? I own this aircraft. I own the company that leases it to you. And I own the company that employs every person who just participated in what happened here. But Marcus wasn't finished. The devastation was just beginning. However, we're not done. Because there's something else you should know about Pinnacle Aviation Services. Walsh's voice came out as a croak. What else? Marcus's phone rang. He answered on speaker, and a woman's voice filled the morning air with corporate authority. Mr. Williams, this is Patricia Hoffman, CEO of Pinnacle Aviation Services. I understand there's been an incident involving our staff and our largest shareholder. The ground seemed to shift beneath Walsh's feet. Largest? Shareholder? Hoffman's voice carried clearly to every phone, every camera, every witness. Mr. David Walsh, this is your ultimate boss speaking. Are you aware that as of last month, Pinnacle Aviation Services was acquired by Aerolux Holdings in a $340 million 0-cents transaction? The security theater collapsed instantly. 4 police officers stepped back. 12 airport personnel suddenly found other places to look. The news stringer's camera captured every moment of the power structure inverting itself. Walsh's world disintegrated in real time. We were told the acquisition was by a private equity consortium. Aerolux Holdings is a private equity consortium, Hoffman explained with the patience of someone addressing a child. Owned and operated by Marcus Williams, who is now the majority owner of your employer. Richardson staggered backward, reaching for the aircraft stairs to steady himself. How is that possible? Marcus pulled out his phone again, accessing financial documents with the casual ease of someone reviewing a grocery list. Since you're curious about the business relationships here, let me provide some clarity. The numbers that followed would later be cited in 3 Harvard Business School case studies. Richardson Industries paid Aerolux Holdings $847,000, 0 cents last year for aircraft sublease agreements. Pinnacle Aviation Services received $1,200,000, 0 cents from Aerolux Holdings for management and crew services. Richardson Industries' total aviation budget represents 0.3% of Aerolux Holdings' annual revenue. Each number hit like a physical blow. Richardson's business empire, his source of pride and power, was revealed as a rounding error in Marcus's corporate portfolio. But here's the number that matters most, Marcus continued, his voice gaining intensity. 0. That's how many passengers Pinnacle Aviation Services will refuse service to based on racial assumptions going forward. Torres found her voice. Mr. Williams, I want you to know that I was just following established protocols. I wasn't trying to— Miss Torres, the established protocols were discriminatory. That's exactly the problem we're going to solve. Jessica Martinez stepped forward, her tablet still displaying the ownership documents that had started this revelation. Sir, I tried to warn them. I saw the documentation, but they wouldn't listen. Marcus nodded to her. Thank you, Jessica. Your professionalism will be noted in your performance review. Walsh made one desperate attempt to salvage his career. Mr. Williams, surely this was all a misunderstanding. We can resolve this internally, implement new training, ensure this never happens again. Mr. Walsh, Marcus interrupted. You spent 20 minutes implementing discriminatory policies while representing my company. You denied boarding to the owner of the aircraft based on racial assumptions. You coordinated with airport security to have me removed from my own property. The legal implications began crystallizing. Richardson's attorney brain finally engaged. Wait, if you own the aircraft and you own the management company, then my lease agreement— Your lease agreement contains 17 specific clauses about non-discrimination, equal treatment, and passenger approval protocols. You personally signed acknowledgement of these terms in March, June, and September of this year. Marcus pulled up the digital signatures on his phone. Richardson's own signature appeared on screen, accepting terms he'd apparently never read. Each violation carries a $50,000 0 cents penalty. Each discriminatory incident constitutes breach of contract. Each instance of preventing the lessor from accessing the leased property represents grounds for immediate lease termination. The math was simple and devastating. Richardson owed approximately $200,000, 0 cents, in penalties and faced immediate eviction from his primary mode of business transportation. But the financial consequences were nothing compared to what came next. Officer Morrison, who had been quietly observing the entire exchange, finally spoke. Mr. Williams, given what we've just learned, how would you like to proceed regarding the discrimination incident? Marcus looked around the circle of faces, some hostile, some terrified, all waiting for his decision. Officer Morrison, I want every detail of this incident documented. I want statements from every witness. I want the audio and video evidence preserved, and I want a formal investigation into airport security protocols that allowed discrimination to escalate to this level. Richardson made one final plea. Look, obviously there's been a misunderstanding. I had no idea about the ownership structure. My assistant handles most of the paperwork, and I was simply following what I thought were standard procedures. Marcus's response cut through the excuses like a laser. Mr. Richardson, you personally told these officers that you had never seen me before in your life. You personally requested my removal from the aircraft. You personally participated in a coordinated effort to humiliate someone based on racial assumptions. But I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. You assumed you held the power, so you never bothered to understand the actual power structure. Patricia Hoffman's voice returned through the phone speaker. Mr. Williams, what are your instructions regarding the Pinnacle Aviation employees involved in this incident? The question everyone had been dreading. Marcus looked at Walsh, Torres, and Bradley in turn. 3 careers hanging in the balance. 3 families depending on decisions made in the next 60 seconds. Patricia, we'll discuss individual consequences privately, but I want immediate implementation of the comprehensive anti-discrimination policy we developed last month. Every employee, every facility, every interaction. Understood. And regarding Mr. Richardson's lease agreement, Marcus paused, studying Richardson's face. The man who had demanded his removal now stood broken, humiliated, and facing the destruction of his business operations. We'll address the lease violations through proper legal channels. Mr. Richardson will have opportunity to respond through his attorneys. But even as Marcus spoke those measured words, everyone present understood the truth. Richardson Industries would never recover from this day. The video footage, the witness statements, the public humiliation, it would follow Richardson for the rest of his career. And it had all been recorded. Every moment, every word, every assumption, and every consequence. The phones that had captured Richardson's power would now broadcast his downfall. The security cameras that had witnessed his authority would now document his defeat. The same system that had protected his discrimination would now ensure his accountability. Marcus Williams had just demonstrated the difference between borrowed power and actual ownership, between assumed authority and real control, between temporary influence and permanent consequence. And they had given him 20 minutes to do it. What happened next would be studied in business schools for decades. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He didn't need to. When you own the game board, you don't have to flip the table. "Patricia," he said into the phone, ensuring every witness could hear. "Please read the anti-discrimination policy we implemented company-wide 3 weeks ago." Hoffman's voice carried across the tarmac with corporate authority. "All Pinnacle Aviation employees are required to provide equal service regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, or perceived economic status. Violations result in immediate termination, forfeiture of benefits, and potential civil liability." Walsh's face went from pale to green. He'd signed acknowledgement of that policy. They all had. Now please read the penalty structure for policy violations. First offense, mandatory sensitivity training and formal reprimand. Second offense, suspension without pay and probationary status. Third offense, immediate termination for cause with no severance package. The implications crystallized. This wasn't Walsh's first offense. Marcus had been watching, documenting, building a case for months. "Patricia, how many documented complaints have we received about discriminatory treatment at Gate 7 in the past 6 months?" The silence stretched like a held breath. 17 complaints, sir, all involving the same management team, all dismissed as misunderstandings by local supervisors. Blank. At 17. The number hit like a physical blow. 17 people had faced the same humiliation Marcus just experienced. 17 families had been denied service. 17 human beings had been judged unworthy based on appearance alone. Richardson found his voice. "That's impossible. I would have been notified of complaints affecting my travel arrangements." "Mr. Richardson," Marcus replied, "you were never notified because you were never the actual client. Aerolux Holdings was the client. You were a sublessee with no authority over operational decisions. The distinction mattered legally, it mattered financially, it mattered in ways Richardson was just beginning to understand." Marcus addressed the gathered crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today was not an isolated incident. It was the predictable result of systematic discrimination enabled by inadequate oversight and corporate indifference." He pulled up more documents on his phone. Financial records, legal agreements, policy violations. Aerolux Holdings has invested $127 million, 0 cents, in aviation services over the past 18 months. We employ 2,847 people across 12 companies. We serve 34,000 customers annually. The scope of Marcus's business empire began registering with the witnesses. This wasn't just about one aircraft or one flight. This was about an industry leader implementing systematic change. "Patricia, what percentage of Pinnacle Aviation's revenue comes from Aerolux Holdings contracts?" 37%, sir. You're our largest client by a significant margin." Walsh's career evaporated in real time. Torres realized her pension was forfeit. Bradley understood his security clearance would be revoked. But Marcus wasn't finished dismantling their world. "Officer Morrison, I want to file formal complaints for discrimination, harassment, and denial of service. I want those complaints processed according to federal civil rights statutes. Morrison nodded, already taking notes. Sir, given the documented nature of this incident and the multiple witnesses, we'll need statements from everyone present. Everyone? Richardson's voice cracked. Everyone who participated in or witnessed the discriminatory treatment. That meant 17 witness statements, video evidence from multiple sources, audio recordings from security cameras, a paper trail that would follow everyone involved for years. Marcus turned to Richardson with surgical precision. Now about your lease agreement. Richardson's attorney instincts finally engaged. I want to speak with my legal counsel before... You can speak with anyone you like. But the lease violations are documented, witnessed, and recorded. Your signature is on file, acknowledging the anti-discrimination clauses. The penalties are contractually established. Marcus pulled up the specific contract language on his phone screen. Section 14.3. Lessee agrees that any act of discrimination against aircraft owner, aircraft operator, or approved passengers constitutes material breach of agreement, resulting in immediate lease termination and financial penalties not to exceed $200,000, 0 cents. Section 14.7. Lessee acknowledges that owner retains ultimate authority over all passenger approval, flight operations, and aircraft access decisions. Section 14.12. Any attempt by lessee to deny owner access to leased property constitutes criminal trespassing and civil conversion, punishable under federal and state law. Each clause was a nail in Richardson's corporate coffin. But the financial destruction was just the beginning. Patricia, please outline the systematic changes we discussed implementing across all Aerolux Holdings aviation properties. Hoffman's response demonstrated the scope of transformation Marcus was orchestrating. Immediate implementation of bias training for all customer-facing employees. Installation of audio monitoring systems to identify and address discriminatory language. Creation of anonymous reporting mechanisms for both customers and employees. Monthly diversity and inclusion assessments for all management personnel. And the technology solutions? Development of a real-time discrimination reporting app. Integration with existing customer service platforms. Automated alerts for any complaints involving discriminatory treatment. Quarterly external audits by civil rights organizations. The changes would cost millions to implement. They would reshape industry standards. They would prevent thousands of future incidents. Marcus was using his corporate power to institutionalize justice. Walsh made one desperate attempt to salvage something. Mr. Williams, perhaps we could discuss this privately. Internal resolution, confidentiality agreements, mutual understanding. Mr. Walsh, confidentiality agreements protect institutional discrimination. Private resolution enables systematic abuse. Mutual understanding requires acknowledging that what happened here was criminal. Criminal? Conspiracy to deny civil rights. Harassment based on protected characteristics. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Each carries federal penalties. The legal framework was devastating. Marcus had built an airtight case using existing law, documented evidence, and multiple witnesses. Richardson tried one final negotiation. What do you want? Financial compensation? Public apology? Policy changes? Whatever it takes to resolve this professionally. Public indictment. Marcus's response was delivered with the quiet authority of someone who had transformed personal humiliation into systematic change. Mr. Richardson, this isn't about what I want. This is about ensuring that no one else experiences what I experienced today. It's about creating accountability where none existed. It's about using institutional power to protect people who don't have institutional power. He gestured to the witnesses, the cameras, the recording devices capturing everything. What I want is a complete restructuring of how business gets conducted in this industry. What I want is training, monitoring, and accountability mechanisms that prevent discrimination before it occurs. What I want is a system where someone's race, gender, or appearance never determines their access to service. And if I refuse to cooperate? Marcus's smile was cold and precise. Mr. Richardson, you don't have the option to refuse. You violated federal law on camera with multiple witnesses. You breached contracts you legally agreed to follow. You participated in systematic discrimination against the owner of the company that controls your business operations. The trap was complete. Richardson had no legal recourse, no financial leverage, no political protection. It took every ounce of courage. You have two choices, Marcus continued. Cooperate fully with the systematic changes we're implementing or face the full legal and financial consequences of your actions. Federal civil rights violations carry penalties up to $100,000 0 cents per incident. Contract violations in your lease agreement total $200,000 0 cents. Civil liability for intentional discrimination typically ranges from $250,000 0 cents to $500,000 0 cents. The math was simple: cooperation or financial destruction. Richardson's empire, built on assumptions of power and privilege, crumbled in the span of a single conversation. But Marcus wasn't interested in personal revenge. He was implementing institutional change that would outlast all of them. Patricia, how quickly can we have the new policies operational across all facilities? 60 days for full implementation, sir. Training programs, monitoring systems, and accountability mechanisms will be active before the end of the quarter. And the legal framework for ongoing compliance? External civil rights auditors will conduct quarterly assessments. Any facility failing to meet standards will face immediate review and potential management replacement. Marcus had just restructured an entire industry's approach to customer service, discrimination prevention, and corporate accountability. All because 17 people had been judged unworthy of basic respect. All because systematic change required systematic power. All because 20 minutes of humiliation had revealed the blueprint for decades of justice. The immediate consequences unfolded with the efficiency of a well-orchestrated corporate restructuring. Walsh removed his company badge with trembling hands, placing it on Captain Stevens' clipboard like a surrender document. I need to call my wife. Explain how I lost everything in 20 minutes. Torres stepped forward, her voice barely audible. Mr. Williams, I want you to know that I was following what I believed were company protocols. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Marcus's response was measured but unyielding. Ms. Torres, the company protocols were discriminatory. That's precisely the systemic problem we're eliminating. Your intent doesn't erase the impact of your actions. Bradley, the security guard who had started this entire confrontation, stood frozen. 23 years of security work, pension 6 months away, career destroyed by assumptions he'd never questioned. Sir, he said quietly, I was just doing my job. Your job was to provide security, not to profile customers based on race. There's a difference between protection and discrimination. Richardson watched his business relationships disintegrate in real time. 3 years of reliable transportation, gone. Professional reputation, shattered. The video footage already spreading across social media would follow him for decades. I'll issue a public apology, he offered desperately. I'll make financial amends. I'll attend sensitivity training. Whatever it takes to make this right. Marcus studied Richardson's face. The desperation, the genuine fear, the dawning understanding of consequences. Mr. Richardson, you'll issue a public apology because it's legally required, not because it erases the harm you caused. You'll attend sensitivity training because your behavior demonstrated ignorance that endangered my employees and customers. But surely we can reach some arrangement. We can reach an arrangement where you accept responsibility, cooperate with policy changes, and demonstrate through actions that you understand why discrimination is unacceptable. Officer Morrison completed her incident report, documenting 17 separate policy violations, 3 potential criminal charges, and multiple civil rights infractions. The legal machinery was already in motion. Mr. Williams, do you want to press charges for the discriminatory treatment and denial of access to your property? Marcus considered the question that would determine the trajectory of multiple lives. Officer Morrison, I want you to file a comprehensive incident report that accurately describes every action taken here today. The legal system can determine appropriate criminal consequences. My focus is on preventing this from happening to anyone else. The crowd of witnesses began dispersing, but not before several approached Marcus directly, a businesswoman in her 50s. Sir, I recorded everything. If you need testimony for legal proceedings, I'm happy to provide it. A young airport employee. I've seen this kind of treatment before. Thank you for standing up and doing something about it. A retired airline pilot. 30 years in aviation, and I've never seen systematic change implemented this quickly. This industry needed this wake-up call. The ripple effects were already beginning. Patricia Hoffman's voice returned through the phone speaker. Mr. Williams, I've initiated emergency policy implementation across all 127 Pinnacle Aviation facilities. What's the timeline for complete transformation? New signage will be posted within 48 hours stating our commitment to equal service for all customers. Mandatory bias training begins next Monday for all customer-facing employees. Anonymous reporting systems will be operational by Friday. And the monitoring technology? Audio recording systems for all customer interactions will be installed within 30 days. Real-time discrimination alerts will be integrated into our customer service platforms within 60 days. Marcus was implementing changes that would cost $2,300,000, 0 cents to execute, but would prevent thousands of future discrimination incidents. The financial investment represented more than policy compliance. It demonstrated institutional commitment to justice. Patricia, I want quarterly reports on discrimination complaints, resolution times, and employee compliance rates. Any facility showing patterns of discriminatory behavior will face immediate management review. Understood, sir. We're also establishing partnerships with local civil rights organizations to conduct external audits and provide ongoing training support. Jessica Martinez, the flight attendant whose courage had helped expose the truth, approached Marcus as the crowd thinned. Sir, I want to thank you for handling this the way you did. I've seen discrimination in this industry for years, but no one with power ever seemed to care enough to fix it systematically. Marcus nodded to her. Jessica, your professionalism and moral courage will be recognized in your personnel file. The company needs more employees willing to speak up when they witness injustice. Will the changes actually stick? Or will everything go back to normal once the attention dies down? The changes will stick because they're built into the corporate structure now. Policy compliance affects management bonuses, promotion criteria, and employment security. We've made equality profitable and discrimination expensive. The systematic nature of Marcus's response was revolutionary. Rather than seeking personal revenge, he had used corporate power to institutionalize justice. Richardson made one final attempt to understand his new reality. How do I explain this to my business partners, my investors, my clients? Marcus's response was brutally honest. You explain that discriminatory behavior has consequences. You explain that assumptions about power and privilege were proven wrong. You explain that treating people with basic respect isn't optional in a civilized society. And my lease agreement? Your lease agreement contained clauses you chose to ignore. The penalties are contractually established. Your cooperation with policy changes and public acknowledgement of wrongdoing will be considered in determining final financial consequences. As the sun climbed higher, casting shorter shadows across the tarmac, the transformation was complete. An incident that began with assumptions about power had ended with a demonstration of what real power could accomplish. Airport Security Chief Kane approached Marcus with evident respect. "Sir, we'll be reviewing our response protocols to ensure this type of discrimination doesn't escalate in the future. Your patience with our investigation process is appreciated." Chief Kane, systematic discrimination requires systematic solutions. Individual accountability is important, but institutional change prevents future victims. The aircraft that had been the center of the controversy sat gleaming in the morning sun, its ownership no longer in question, its purpose transformed from a symbol of exclusion to a catalyst for inclusion. Marcus Williams had spent 20 minutes being judged by his appearance. He had used those same 20 minutes to rebuild an industry's approach to human dignity. 6 months later, the incident at Gate 7 had become a case study in corporate accountability and systematic transformation. The video footage, captured by 17 different phones, garnered 4.2 million views within the first week. It sparked a national conversation about discrimination in luxury service industries and the power of institutional change. Pinnacle Aviation Services reported 0 discrimination complaints in the 6 months following implementation of the Williams Protocol, the comprehensive anti-bias framework that other aviation companies began voluntarily adopting. Employee satisfaction scores increased by 23%. Customer retention improved by 31%. The company received the National Civil Rights Award for Corporate Excellence. Aerolux Holdings expanded to include 19 aviation companies nationwide, each implementing identical anti-discrimination policies. Marcus Williams was featured on the cover of Forbes as the CEO who turned personal humiliation into industry transformation. Chime track. But the most significant changes weren't measured in profits or awards. Richardson Industries lost 4 major contracts within 3 months. Richardson himself completed court-mandated sensitivity training, made public apologies, and donated $250,000, 0 cents, to civil rights organizations. He eventually sold his company and retired from business entirely. Walsh, Torres, and Bradley found new employment after completing extensive bias training at their own expense. Each signed agreements acknowledging their role in systematic discrimination and committing to advocate for inclusive policies in future positions. The ripple effects extended far beyond aviation. 17 states introduced legislation requiring bias training in luxury service industries. 3 federal agencies launched investigations into discrimination patterns in private transportation. Most importantly, 847 people who might have faced similar discrimination were protected by systems that didn't exist before Marcus Williams stood on that tarmac. During a Harvard Business School keynote 6 months later, Marcus reflected on the morning that changed everything. "People often ask why I didn't immediately reveal my identity and end the situation. The answer is simple. I wanted to experience exactly what happens to people who don't have the power to fight back. The discrimination I faced wasn't unique to me. It happens to countless individuals every day who lack the resources, the platform, or the institutional power to demand change. Real victory isn't about personal revenge. It's about using whatever power you have to ensure others don't face the same injustice you experienced." We transformed a moment of humiliation into a blueprint for systematic change that will protect people for decades. The Williams Foundation, established with proceeds from the legal settlements, has provided support for 73 discrimination cases in transportation industries nationwide. The 20-minute protocol became standard training material for corporate executives learning to identify and eliminate systematic bias. Marcus Williams had proven that the most powerful response to discrimination isn't anger or revenge. It's the systematic reconstruction of the systems that enable injustice. Your voice in this fight matters more than you realize. Have you witnessed discrimination in service industries? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience could spark the next systematic change. Have you seen businesses implement real changes after facing consequences? Tell us about companies doing the right thing. Do you believe systematic transformation is possible when people with power choose to use it for justice? Hit the like button and share this story. Every comment, every share, every subscription sends a message that discrimination has consequences and that systematic change is not only possible, it's inevitable when enough people demand it. Subscribe to see more stories of accountability and transformation. Ring the notification bell to never miss an update on systematic change in action. Because the next time someone faces discrimination, the systems we build today will determine whether they stand alone or whether they have institutional protection. Your engagement with this story is part of building those protective systems. What will you do with your power to create change? The next 20 minutes that transform an industry could start with your decision to take action.